Okay, so let's talk about EQs. We talked about compression, and we saw that some of the go-to guys would be like 1176 or an LA2A, and what we're going to, or the Renaissance Vox. So we're now going to look at EQ. So if we look here on the screen, we're now going to switch over to her, Madeline, and we're looking at her verse. The only thing I have running so far is just this 1176, and you get in similar settings to how I had it with Joe, slow attack, fast release, just kind of getting the ball rolling with compression. We'll play a little bit of it here.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more when I know he won't believe me?
Okay, another just great performance. We've already tuned that. It sounds good. So let's close this compressor. And the first EQ I want to talk about is a FabFilter Pro Q2. This thing is a workhorse, and it might be a little larger on your screen, so let me make it smaller. And I use this guy every day. And a couple things that stand out about it. Number one, it's a really clean EQ, and one of the things that we all love about it is that it gives you a visualization. So if you watch it here.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more when I know he won't believe me?
What's great, those too, is that you can see that you can freeze
How can I tell him
what's happening
I'm
here.
not in love?
Okay, just like that, and you can see where that's at. Okay, so let's talk about this. First thing you want to do when you're EQing vocals is get rid of all of this junk that's in the sub and lower bass frequencies and harmonics. So what we typically do is you can double click here and create a low cut. And this is a perfect type of EQ to get the ball rolling with that. Now, one common mistake I see with people that are just getting started is that they'll overdo it. They'll just start rolling and rolling, and so if we listen to her sing,
How can I tell him I'm not
they start
in
going up
love
and
no more?
they'll do it way too much, and you want some of that low mid in her voice. So I would say with guy singers, I would start at you're safe at about 60 hertz, okay, and end down at the very even 50 hertz with a cut at a 12 dB per octave cut. And with girls, you could probably go up a little higher, maybe 70, 75. Start there.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
Another great thing about this EQ is that you can click this little headphone, and it'll let you know what it's cutting out. So, okay, so, and let's solo that vocal. Do it again. Okay, and if we go lower and lower. Okay, so we don't want to go that high. We're just going to kind of keep it right here at 70.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
Okay, so that's a good place to start right there. Now, let's talk about cutting and boosting for a second, because that is always such a hot topic. And even some mixers are known for like, oh, those guys always boost, or oh, those guys always cut. And trust me, all the top pro mixers, they do both. They cut and they boost. I've been there, I've sat with them. It's not like one guy just only cuts, the other guy only just boosts. It's just not accurate. Here's my train of thought. And again, this is just my thought. Before I start boosting anything, I do typically like to cut. And there's, in a vocal, kind of the same issues always keep popping up on the frequency spectrum. It's kind of like the same symptoms of issues that trouble a vocal in the EQ curve. First thing is in this kind of mud, as we call it, and that can be anywhere between, like I'd say, about 180 hertz and I don't know, 275. So right in here, and let's do a little headphone solo. You can hear what I'm talking about. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? So pretty much right now at about 250, 260, and you can see it on even the visualization. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? Okay, so let your ears get used to that. That is a sound that you don't necessarily want a lot of in that vocal. So let's just take a little, I don't know, 2 dB cut of that, and let's play that back. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? Okay, let's take that out, put it back in there. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? Okay, and so that you can hear, and sometimes I'll even make it this is what we call a cue, but essentially think of a cue as just like how focused are you with that specific bell, all right? And as you raise the cue amount, it gets more and more, gets sharper and sharper. So, how can I tell him I'm not in love no more? Okay. The second big issue is somewhere around like 400, 500, which is not quite this high, like 550 to 600. And this is what we call like the boxy area. So let's listen to that. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? Okay, and that's that up there. So sometimes you can just take a little bit of that out. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? And then as far as the last thing I would potentially cut, I think we're just talking about cutting, is things that can be sounding a little harsh. So that can be anywhere between 2K, 3K, 4K at those specific points. So let's listen to what that range, and let's make this a smaller key so you can hear a tighter range. Not that tight. Okay, so there, like that 4K specifically. Sometimes that can be an issue. And let's just slide it down to 2.5 just so we can hear it. 2 key. And with her voice, that doesn't seem to be as big of the issue. Let's look at 3. That is more than the 2, and then let's look at 4. And that right there on like 3.8, something like that. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? I'm cool with that. So if I was gonna cut anywhere, I would potentially cut there. So let's do everything off. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? And let's engage. How can I tell him I'm not in love no more? Okay, so that is a FabFilter Pro Q2, and that's just a quick look at cutting. And now we're going to look at an API and boosting. And you're saying, okay, well, why am I kind of keeping those together? Here's my concept, and track with me on this. I typically like to cut with some of these more surgical EQs like a FabFilter Pro Q2 or the George Massenburg MDW. It's another great one from Universal Audio. Everything from the DMG guys, Equality and Equilibrium. And then when I'm ready to add, I typically like to grab some of these more vintage EQs because A, I get the color and saturation from the EQ, and number 2, they typically will add in a very musical way. And we're going to look at 2 today. We're going to look at this API, and we're also going to look at an SSL. And API is made here in the United States, our American company, and SSL is from England. And they're both stunning consoles and emulations, and they both are kind of a little bit different. But the API, for me, I really love boosting all the nice top stuff. So let's just look here at, for example, like at the 10K. And essentially, if you look down here, you can pick and choose between either using a shelf or just a bell. And we'll start with the shelf. We'll give that a listen.
How can I tell him?
Let's bring that guitar back in there too.
How can I tell him?
And if you click on the pluses, actually just on the numbers, that allows us. So let's just add 2 dB of shelf. Here, let's.
How can I tell him?
Is that another one?
I'm not in love no more.
And what I've learned with APIs is that a little goes a long way. So even at 2 dB, it's already starting to open up top.
How can I tell him?
Let's just do way too much. Let's do 9 dB, which is just insanity. But let's go.
How can I tell him?
Okay, so that now you can really hear like, oh, okay, it's way up there. That's the frequency we're talking about. And let's take it off.
How can I tell him?
Okay, so now it sounds a little dark after you've overcooked it. And now we can kind of come back down to earth. And let's just stick with 2 dB up there.
How can I tell him?
Okay, well, there's one example. Another thing is 3K is kind of like, if you were to say, what is clarity in the voice, I'd say about 3K. And again, it's tricky because if you start overcooking it, it can sound too harsh. Let's add 2 dB at 3K on the bell.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
That's nice. Let's try 1.5.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
I really like that. Let's try another 2 dB of 1.5.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
So that's maybe a little bit much. But that's how these work. So just again for the confusion of this, the gray knobs control the amount of gain. So you can go backwards on the gray, and that's now in the minus, so we could take away, and then if you add, it goes to the right. And then the smaller knob, which is the blue one, that allows you to pick between frequencies. So here in the mid-range it says 0.4, meaning that's 400 hertz, 800 hertz, now 1.5K, 3K, 5K, so on and so forth. And the same thing on the remainder of those knobs. Another thing I sometimes like to do with this is actually subtract a little bit of 300 out. So let's see here how that sounds.
How can I tell him?
So let's say we add 2 dB at 1.5 and take out 300. Let's see what this sounds.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
Let's add that 300 back in.
How can I tell him?
Yeah.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
Okay, so that's how an API works. And again, we did show an example of cutting, but typically I like to boost with an API and with any of these vintage consoles. The main EQ that I would typically say I use just about as often as I use with the FabFilter Pro Q2 is the SSL, specifically this one from Universal Audio. Waves makes one as well as even Brainworks and Plug & Alliance have an SSL emulation now that's really, really strong. But specifically, the guy that I'm always reaching for is this shelf up top, which is the EQ side of this plugin is over here on the right. So down here we have the low frequencies, it's called LF, and here's that frequency range. And one thing I like to do is take a little bit of that bottom out.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
And what's crazy is it's even just running the signal through the SSL just by itself gives it a slightly brighter and more saturated color and character. The guys at Universal Audio really crushed it with this emulation. It just sounds great.
How can I tell him?
The next thing I would do is I would add some of this 8K shelf up here. So let's just watch this meter as I kind of add it in up here.
How can I tell him I'm not in love no more?
And there's just something about that 8K shelf, man. It's just special. And let's listen to a different part of the song.
when I know he won't believe me.
Okay, and then the next thing I would potentially boost is maybe some of that 4.5K.
When I know,
Or maybe even take some of that out, but boost some of this 2.5. Okay, so there's 3 knobs on these high mids and low mids. The top one is your gain, plus or minus. The right one is the frequency. And then the bottom one is actually our old friend, the Q, okay? So big, wide Q, and then really sharp Q. So when I'm typically taking things away, I tend to sharpen up the Q, and when I add, I like a kind of a fuller, wider sound. So let's do a sharp Q, and let's take out again, like we were hearing, some of that potential 4.5K. And another cool thing that people used to do before they had any of these plugins is that they would sweep. And what a sweep means is that you can go up here, and let's say we're going to pick somewhere here around 4K, and we're just going to crank it. And just be careful, turn down your monitors if you need to, because this is going to sound harsh. But essentially, we're going to try to find that spot we want to cut out.
when I know he won't believe me.
Let's take that.
And I tell him I'm not in love no more. When I know,
It's about right there. And we'll take that out.
and I tell him I'm not in love no more.
Okay, so here's here at the bottom. This is EQ in, EQ out. So let's take it out for a second.
And I tell him I'm not in,
With it in.
and I tell him
Clearer.
I'm not in love no more.
And now we'll add just a little bit of this really wide 2.5.
And I tell him I'm not in love no more.
And look at me on this. I'm not using a lot, okay? I'm just using a little bit here and a little bit there. There's no big, oh my gosh, I'm using 15 decibels of this, and it's not that you can't, because again, there are pros that will tell you, like in this one instance, I just had to crank it up. But this was well recorded. We're already in a good place. We already did some of that stuff with the Pro Q2 beforehand. And now we're just kind of nudging it in the right direction. And again, I'd rather you do a little bit on a few plugins than big drastic things necessarily on just one. Again, that's just the way I like to work. But I've found that just doing small incremental stuff goes a long, 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 long way.
And I tell him I'm not in love no more.
Last thing I want to talk about on this SSL is the filters here at the bottom. And it's similar to the ones that we saw with the Fab filter, but these are just preset. So this is coming from 0 hertz all the way up to 350, and if we were to crank it, again, we would see that we'd overcut. So listen to this.
And I tell him
Right?
I'm not in love no more.
But it's a really, really very musical cut, low cut or high pass, depending on however you want to call it. And again, I don't mind, again, kind of reaching up towards that
And
70.
I tell him I'm not in love no more.
So here's even up, and with a girl, we can, you can crank it up.
And I tell him I'm not in love no more. When I know.
And see, I dig that. I dig that a lot. The one pitfall to watch out, and this, I guess, pro tip: don't take all the bottom out of a girl's voice. You want a little bit of warmth down there. Let's say 140, 150. So just be careful with that you don't make her to sound too thin. But 9 times out of 10, I would say most people still have too much mud, low mid bass in a vocal, and it's clouding it up.
And I tell him.
So again, with everything off here.
And I tell him I'm not in love no more.
And now with it in.
And I tell him I'm not in love no more.
Maybe back off that 8K just a little bit.
And I tell him I'm not in love no.
So that's the SSL, and I love it. It sounds amazing. It's on my vocals pretty much every time. And again, people ask, why do I need these emulators? Can I just do the same boosts on the FabFilter Pro Q2? You could. You really could. You could start adding in some of those same spots. But these EQs and these hardware that these guys modeled, they have a richness and a saturation and a musicality and a depth three-dimensionally, which means from here to here with your sounds, that these units bring out in your music and your sounds and your vocals and your beats and whatever, that you just cannot ignore, and that will make everything sound that much better. So use them if you can. We're going to check out de-essers next, which is really important with vocals.